During July and August 2006, Anna and I had a holiday in Europe. We spent most of our time in Poland, living in Krakow, but we also visited Paris, drove across Germany and the Czech Republic. Anna flew directly. I came later and had a stopover in Vienna for a couple of hours. This is St. Stephen's Square. It's dominated by the cathedral, which is behind us to the left. The cathedral's enormous. Pity the day was so horrible. The following shots show some details of the artwork in a fresco. Walking around Vienna after leaving the square, I found Morgan's Rum and More. Look closely at the specials menu on the blackboard at the right-hand corner. You'll see that he sells everything. This was where we spent most of our time on holidays. Anna's lovely dad, Alfred Armata, was our host. Alfred's 88 years old. I was fortunate to meet Anna's nephew, Bartek, and his mother, Goshka. We also visited Anna's long-term friend, Kuka, and her son, Artek. Kuka's been an absolute treasure in helping us with Alfred's health issues. This is the Barbican. It's got 3-metre thick walls, and its role was to defend medieval Krakow's northern boundary. It's one of the few left in Europe. We're now looking at the Florian Gate. This is just a few metres behind the Barbican and forms part of the old city walls. To the left of this, artists often hang paintings, and there are usually buskers underneath it. Running between the Florian Gate and Main Market Square is Ulica Florianska. This is a very upmarket street for pedestrians only. We'll now take a bit of a walk around Main Market Square. This is one of the biggest squares in Europe. Main Market Square buzzes at any time, even during the day. It's filled with drinking places and places to eat. This is the delightfully named Rat House, or Council Chambers Tower, which is all that remains of the old council chambers. We now get our first glimpse of Cloth Hall. It was modelled in a Renaissance style after a 1555 fire, and today the ground level is still a busy trade centre with dozens of stalls selling amber, craftwork, t-shirts and the like. Upstairs there's a fine collection of Polish art. This statue honours Adam Mickiewicz. He was a 19th century poet and is regarded as a national icon. The square was alive with buskers.
Oni są z Białorusi albo z Ukrainy.
Did you hear that?
I heard her say Russian and Ukraine.
She said either Belarus or Ukraine. Look, he moved.
I'd say they were Central Asian. Kazakh. Have you got a couple of zloty coin?
Yes. Oh my God. You can use all the change I have because it's only very small change.
So Boris to them. Help with a knowing smile.
This is a Tatar. If he saw you taking his photo and you hadn't paid, he turned around very quickly. We're now looking at the Marian Church. The original church was built in 1220 but was destroyed during Tatar raids. This is a 15th century recreation. Inside the church is the magnificent Víctor altar, which is regarded as one of Poland's greatest masterpieces. It opens on a daily basis and shows 6 panels accounting episodes from the life of the Virgin Mary. The rest of the church is fabulous. The ceiling is wonderful, as are the walls. Every hour, a medieval bugle call plays from the high tower. The legend is that a 13th century watchman was felled by a Tatar arrow in the middle of his bugling, and the tune has remained that way ever since. These next few shots show the views from the tower where the bugler plays. The first one was looking towards Alfred Place, then we move our way round and we eventually get our first glance of Wawel Castle. This is Collegium Novum, part of the Jagiellonian University. Collegium Maius, dating from the 15th century, is Poland's oldest university. This was where Copernicus was educated. At 1 p.m, the clock outside has a parade with the old student song Goriamus Igitur. This is St Anna's, where our Anna got married. The Ethnographical Museum was built in the 14th century and started as a town hall of Casimir. Today it houses an exhibition of Polish folk traditions and costumes. They charge heavily for photographs. Ulica Grodzka leads away from Main Market Square towards the churches of St Peter and Paul. Formerly a Jesuit church, St Peter's and Paul's was completed in 1622. It's dominated by the life-size statues of the 12 apostles. Ulica Kanonica leads us to Wawel Castle. The castle is huge. The first fortress was built in the 11th century. The present castle dates largely from the 16th century. This addition to the castle was made in the 19th century to accommodate the Austrian garrison. We'll just take a stroll around and look at the courtyards. These frescoes are all that remain of what would have dominated the royal area. This is the Sigismund Tower, part of Wawel Cathedral inside the castle. The Great Sigismund Bell was cast in 1520, 2 metres high and weighs 11 tonnes. It's the largest historic bell in Poland, 70 steps to get to see it. In the basement of the chapel are several crypts, including the sarcophagi of the national hero Tadeusz Kościuszko. Outside the castle walls, the dragon will breathe fire if you SMS to the right number. We took a trip on the Vistula with Alfred as well as Goshka and Bartek. This is the nunnery of Norbert Tanig in Salvatore. This is Kostel na Skalca. In the 11th century, the king of the time killed the first Christian bishop. Not too many people can boast a water fire brigade. We're now looking at Kazimierz, which was a town outside of Krakow and over time became the Jewish quarter. Wieliczka salt mine was in operation for around 700 years and reaches a depth of 327 metres. You start the tour by descending 380 wooden stairs to 135 metres. The grey-green salt was formed into large barrels and was then hoisted out by a wooden and rope crane. The miners carved life-size statues out of the salt. This shows Copernicus, Casimir the Great and Saint Kinga. They also carved chapels. This is the chapel of the Blessed Kinga, 54 metres by 17 metres, taking 30 years to create, being completed in 1927. Nestled at the foot of the Tatras, Zakopane is Poland's winter sports capital. The queue for the cable car was 5 hours long. Anna managed to get us to the queue jump and we only waited 2 hours. This view is from the top of the cable car and shows where we came from. Even though it was high summer, there was still some residual snow on the runs. We couldn't resist climbing all the way up to the weather station at the top. The views are quite spectacular. Fortunately, the queue to come down was a lot quicker, and the views outside were fabulous. It was a little nerve-wracking looking down on top of 50-metre pine trees. Krakowski pedestrian mall is the heart of the town, and it's always jammed with tourists and kitsch. The dog only moved if you made a donation, then he barked. The local culinary delight is smoked sheep's milk cheese. Mount Gubawovka is off the northern end of Krakowski. It has a funicular cable car and quite spectacular views. Back in the mall, we took a horse and buggy ride. It took us past traditional houses, ultimately to the Jazkorovka Chapel, which is about 1.5 kilometres away. Very spectacular. Unfortunately, there was no photographing inside. When Anna offered me the opportunity to travel back by train rather than coach, I jumped at it. But it was difficult to convince the travel agents that we wanted to pay more to take a longer trip. Marek Witanovsky invited me to spend some time with him in Warsaw. The Palace of Culture and Science was a gift from the Soviet Union and looks it. It's not well liked and is referred to as an elephant in lacy underwear. Warsaw was completely destroyed by the Germans. These are the rebuilt city walls for Old Town. The Royal Castle dominates the square at the edge of Old Town. 90% of Old Town was destroyed after WW2. There was a reconstruction between 1949 and 1963 to restore it to its 17th and 18th century appearance. Between Old Town and New Town, there is a Barbican, unfortunately undergoing reconstruction. I also got into the wrong side of the executioner. Marie Curie lived in this house for the first 24 years of her life. On the city limits is another palace complex called Villanov. It served as the royal summer residence for Jan III Sobieski. This tomb is on the way to the palace. This monument to Chopin is closer into Warsaw. Each Sunday afternoon they play piano recitals. This house is in Zelazowa Wola, and it was where Chopin was born in 1810. The grounds were really special. I went for a walk round with Marek and Jean, his wife. In April 1943, as the Warsaw Ghetto was being liquidated, the Jews had a spontaneous uprising. This monument commemorates their deaths. Ulica Proźna is a remnant of the Jewish ghetto, unrestored. It still has pockmarks from bullet holes and shrapnel. Kazimierz was the site of the Jewish ghetto in Krakow during World War II. The heart of the quarter is Ulica Szeroka. The Nazis used the Jewish cemetery as a garbage dump. It's been significantly restored and now work is being done on the stones. We took a quick look inside one of the synagogues. After a lot of walking, we needed a beer, complete with straw, and a good feed. Oskar Schindler's factory still remains. This plaque in tribute to Schindler says, "If you save one life, you save the whole world." South of the river is the square where the Jews were mustered before being sent off to the death camps. Roman Polanski placed chairs in memory of them. There's also a tram station which has been done up to look like the old railway station. I visited Auschwitz with Paul and Louise McDonough. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire and electric fences. The tour guide suggested that the slogan, "Work makes you free," was an example of Rudolf Höss's humour. We're looking down a street inside Auschwitz at blocks 3, 2 and 1. Hundreds of people were executed at this wall after a trial. These are the gallows upon which Rudolf Höss, the Auschwitz commandant, was executed after the Nuremberg trial. Auschwitz wasn't really a death camp, it was more a work camp, but they did do initial trials with gassing people. This is the top of the gas chamber, then there's the front of the gas chamber. We went inside, but it was too horrible to take pictures. Birkenau was a purpose-built extermination centre. It's still very intimidating today. Looking from the top of the administration centre, we start by looking at the women's area, then the arrival station, and then the men's area. It's impossible to give a feel for the size. The Russians used most of the wooden buildings in the men's centre to provide warmth on liberation. The barracks were in fact stables and provided very little protection from the elements. These are original pictures on display. They were taken by Nazis showing the sorting of Jews on arrival. The SS tried to destroy the evidence by blowing up the gas chambers. Nobody has done anything. This is how they were when they were found at the end of the war. Most Jews went straight from the railway station to the gas chamber, about a kilometre walk. Only about 10% actually went into work in the camp. The International Monument to the people killed at Auschwitz says, "Forever let this place be a cry of despair and a warning to humanity, where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. Auschwitz-Birkenau, 1940 to 1945. Just to the west of the city is Lasek Volsky, 485 hectares of forest. We're looking at Zamek Shishko Pogusha. This is a centre for expatriate Poles. We're looking from the terrace at the church where Anna had her first communion. After a Vienna coffee that was so full of cream, I was totally wasted when we went walking. The Camaldolese monks have a church and hermitage. Only men are allowed to visit. Anna thought it'd be fun to take a scooter ride, so she organised hire. We took our ride up into the hills behind Krakow, visiting Oitzów, a delightful little village. Then we passed Hercules Machete and got to the aristocratic Pieskowa Skała, which was a watch castle. There were a few of those, and we subsequently got to another where we had our photograph taken by the daughter of the people who were renovating it. We went with Goshka and Bartek out to Pianini National Park, where we took a raft ride with traditional poles. It was supposed to be a 2-hour trip. It ended up being 3.5 because the water level was way down. Nonetheless, as you can see, the countryside was very spectacular. The water wasn't deep, so even if we did fall in, we weren't worried. The river forms the border between Poland and Slovakia. The first village, the Polish one, you'll see is quite different from the Slovakian village on the other side. The Three Crowns Mountain, the highest in the area of Poland, absolutely dominate the trip. This is where Slovakia ends. As we started in Poland, we were able to keep on going. After 3.5 hours sitting on wooden thwarts, we were glad to see the end. We spent 5 days in Paris staying with our friends Paul and Louise at the Australian Embassy. We were really taken with the tower. At night it's covered with lights and every hour flashes. These next few shots are from the Eiffel Tower. The first one shows the Australian Embassy. It's that S-shaped building in the mid-foreground. The next shot is looking towards the Arc de Triomphe and along the Champs-Élysées. The shot that follows is the other end of where the Champs-Élysées goes towards the Place des Invalides. The Arc de Triomphe sits in the Place de l'Étoile. This is traffic chaos, 9 unmarked lanes. The view from the top of the arch is spectacular. We're now looking down the Champs-Élysées. Despite being called the 9th bridge, the Pont Neuf is actually Paris's oldest bridge, and the first stone was laid by Henry III. The Louvre is monumental, and a book said it would take 800 days to see everything. We saw the Mona Lisa, other Da Vinci's, and the Venus de Milo. The Gothic Cathedral Notre Dame is absolutely monumental and magnificent from the outside. Inside, however, is a bit disappointing. Petit Palais was a museum built for the Universal Exposition of 1900, but wasn't actually opened until 1902 officially. We're looking across the Alexander III Bridge with gilt statues at the Grand Palace. The Parisians know how to live. Being Paul's 50th birthday and my 55th, we had to celebrate Parisian style. Anna and I enjoyed travelling in the metro. Motorcycling's different in Paris. Paul took me for a ride. The Church of the Sacred Heart stands on top of Montmartre. It was very hot and very steep. Fortunately, we were able to have a refreshing paddle in a fountain on the way up. Building of the church was started in 1870 and wasn't completed until 1914. We took a day trip by train out to Versailles. The castle's enormous and the grounds were so spectacular that was where we spent our attention. The heatwave effect was obviously showing, and unfortunately none of the fountains were running, but it was still gorgeous. Marie Antoinette had her own hideaway to get away from court, which she didn't really enjoy. Paul and Louise drove us out to the battlefields of the Somme. The Australian War Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux is starkly beautiful. It also shows bullet holes from German attacks in the Second World War. The townspeople remain indebted to Australian soldiers, and it has an Australian flavour about it. This is nearby Albert. The soldiers kept looking at the Virgin on the top. They hoped she would fall because they felt that would sign the end of the war. She fell on the 16th of April 1918. As we drove back to Poland, we passed through Verdun, the site of the other great World War I battles. We passed through the Czech Republic on the way home, having a night in Pilsen and a beer, and then moving on for a day in Prague. When you buy a coffee in Europe, you never know what you're going to get. This is a Prague Long Black. One day in Prague is just simply not enough to do it justice. The city is huge, the buildings are monumental and in fantastic condition. However, the place was very, very packed with people. This is the astronomical clock. We missed by moments the display. We took a bus tour around Prague. We saw things like the Grand Hotel Europa, the statue of Good King Wenceslas, the National Museum, and Marks and Spencer. The roads are mostly cobblestoned, so taking photographs was a bit of a trial as the bus vibrated, but we did get to see the Powder Tower as well. Prague railway station captured my attention. Prague Town Square was beautiful and very lively. The Moldau River divides the town from the castle on the hill which overlooks it. I think you could probably spend a day looking at Prague Castle. Churches feature strongly inside the castle. This is the Archbishop's Palace. For once our timing was good and we got to see the changing of the guard. The poor devils stand there, unmoving, while people put all sorts of clown acts around them. We'll now just take a bit of a walk through Prague Castle and you'll get some feel for scale. The cathedral's absolutely enormous and almost impossible to photograph. We didn't go inside because the queues were just too long and we only had 40 minutes in total in the castle. The other must-see feature of Prague is the Charles Bridge. It's now just for pedestrians and has an awful lot of people selling souvenir-y stuff. It's a magnificent way to see the river. On the bridge is a statue that you're supposed to touch to get a wish granted. I heard 3 different stories: touch with the right hand, touch with the left hand, touch both sides. I did it all and my wish came true. Walk across the bridge and you get to Old Town. All we did was have a brief look. When you come back, you pass through an arch to get back into the main centre. Just inside Poland is Kudowa-Zdrój, a spa town. We stayed in a brand new Hotel Amalia and it was wonderful. In the centre of Kudowa is a beautiful park. It's several hectares and beautifully maintained. At the end of this block is a building where they do water tastings. You can have hot and cold, sulphurous or salty, tolerable and intolerable. It was hard to find, but the Frog Museum was a real highlight. On the outskirts of Kudowa is a bone chapel. They had a problem with storage of bodies after wars and plagues, so the minister decided to exhume them, clean them and decorate his chapel. These are shots of the church that adjoins the bone chapel. They charge an entry fee to the bone chapel and I think I know where they use the money. Further up the hill, Paul and I stopped to have a full body massage. We stopped in Klodzko on the way back to Krakow. When we asked directions to the town square, we were told we had to see the Mini Charles Bridge. They said it was modelled after the one in Prague, and I think they're justifiably proud of it. In line with the rest of Poland, Klodzko was being heavily renovated. One of the more curious features of Krakow are the mounds, which they built to honour people. We visited the Kosciuszko Mound. Kosciuszko Mound is surrounded by an Austrian fort. The mound's a very serious undertaking. This one was completed in the 1820s but was restored after flood damage. The views from the top are breathtaking. This looks out towards Alfred's house. On the way back we had a stopover in Kuala Lumpur. Just as well because Anna's bags went to Bangkok. We took the train into town and these photos were taken from the fast train. The place is alive with motorcycles, all with front number plates. The Petronas Tower is spectacular. Unfortunately, we were too late in the afternoon to get up the top. Anna and I agree this is the best holiday we have ever had.